Hey everyone, and thanks for jumping back into the cryptoverse. Today we're going to talk about Bitcoin, the bear market blues. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up, and also check out the Telegram channel, which you can find a link to in the description below. Let's go ahead and jump in. So a few weeks ago, we put out a video saying, let's call it what it is, right? A bear market. Bitcoin is in a bear market. And we said it right over here when we had these weekly closes below the bull market support band. And the nice thing about just sticking to the data and defining a bear market as being when we're having these weekly closes below it is it does not matter what your emotions say about the matter. It does not matter about what cycle theory you subscribe to. It just simply does not matter. It just shows that, hey, we had a weekly close below the 20-week SMA. Historically, we know this is a pretty bearish indicator. Now, does that mean that we have to go back down to $10,000? Of course not. Of course not. But pretending that things are super bullish when we just dropped from like $64,000 to $29,000, to me seems like, you've already determined in your mind what has to happen. Therefore, you're not open to the idea of alternative possibilities. And if you're not open to the idea of alternative possibilities and you're operating in a somewhat deterministic manner that it has to go to 100K or 300K or something by this summer or by September, by the end of the year, whichever it is, then you're not doing yourselves any favors. And it also goes to show that the news, as we discussed, just really doesn't matter. Okay, now I will say that you can point to the news as a reason that things happen. And to some degree, there are pieces of news articles, there's articles and stuff that could change exactly what happens on a given day, but I don't think that it's going to overwhelmingly change the momentum of the market, if that makes sense. Okay, so for instance, like when Elon Musk tweets about Bitcoin, I've watched firsthand many times how within like 1 or 2 minutes, it seems like people are reacting and people are buying or selling depending on what exactly was said. But at the same time, it's never actually completely changed the momentum of the market. It's never done that. If it's good news when price is going down, it may pump a little bit, but price keeps going down. If it's bad news when price is going up, it might go down a little bit, but then prices keep going up. So at the end of the day, the price is still doing what it was doing before. It just might mean there's like a little blip or not even a pixel on the screen will be remembered in the future by that news that came out. So as we said before, I defined the bear market, being in a bear market, as being below the 20-week SMA. Now, you might say, well, what does it mean to be in a bear market? I've said before, not all bear markets are created equal. You do not have to have a multi-year bear market or accumulation phase every single time. If you go back and look at 2019, we had a bear market here that, the price legitimately dropped 72%. This was not accompanied by a multi-year accumulation phase. This was a relatively quick one. If you take a measured move on this from, say, this candle over here, this was about 259 days. So we're talking about 2/3 of a year approximately. So it goes to show you that you don't actually need to have like a very extended cycle or a very extended sub-cycle of the market to ultimately come back out of it. Now, if you want to look at, say, prior all-time highs, you can see that in this case, it took a very long time to put in a new all-time high. This was about almost 1,100 days. But if you ignored this part of the chart and said, okay, well, how long did it take to put in a new all-time high from this local top? It only took around 497 days. So what I've told you guys before is that I think we are in for a brief bear market within a much longer lengthened cycle. So if you were to look at the market like this and just say, well, we had this first move here followed by a brief bear market, we're having another move. And I said before, I think what comes after that is a period, a lull in the market where we're not able to sustain things. Like we're too far gone in order to sustain things. Remember last cycle, we had systematic tests of the 20-week SMA, and we just sort of, we go up a little bit, test it as support, go up a little bit, test it as support. And we just continued doing that for a long time. We did it like 6 or 7 times before we ultimately broke it. In this case, we didn't do that. We just basically, we tested as support once, then we just went straight up, okay? And then when we got to this point, we're like, are we too far gone? Similar to how we were in 2019, similar to how the market was in 2013 when we were too far gone to hold it as support. But in 2013, we did get back above it relatively quickly, even though we did technically have a weekly close below the 20-week SMA. So when we look at this, we have to look at it where we don't, impose our own bias on what has to happen, but we just look at it for what it is. We look at it and we say, well, the price has gone up 20x. Are we too far gone based on the fact that we didn't really test the 20-week SMA for 6 months? Now we're coming back down below it, similar to 2019. This is a bit steeper, but we also went up a bit more. I mean, this was about a 4x move from the bottom. This move here was closer to around, 20x or so, maybe not quite 20x because we only went down to 3,800 in March. So maybe closer to around 15x, 16x, somewhere in that ballpark. If we say $4,000 went to $64,000, we could obviously say that's about a 16x. And so therefore, we are in fact coming down a little bit steeper. So, I think when I called it a bear market a few weeks ago, I think some people took offense to it because they've had ingrained in their mind that 2021 has to only be a very bullish year for Bitcoin because of the halving and that stuff. We've shown you guys many times that there's a good chance this cycle is going to be longer than the prior cycles, which as always, the prior cycles were longer than the ones that came before those. And so if it is a longer cycle, it makes a lot of sense that you can't just have one continuous bull market that lasts for 2.5 or 3 years. You're going to have some periods where you go down for a while, you consolidate, and then you go back up. But then it could beg the question, well, what then defines a market cycle? I mean, I think that's not a bad question to ask. Like, you really should always be asking good questions. To some degree, it is subjective. Okay, to some degree, it is subjective. But what I'm saying in this situation is that I don't think it's going to take 1,100 days for us to put in a new all-time high like it did last cycle. Okay, I mean, if we measure it from, say, putting in a new all-time high from 14K or a local top, this was around 500 days or so. Now, if you were to go from here and go out, like, let's say a few hundred days, it could look something like that, and until we get to a new all-time high. So we kind of maybe scoop out this bottom here and we sort of fill in that part of the chart. Remember, we've also showed many times like worst case scenario type stuff. Like what would be the worst case scenario? Well, the 200-week SMA tends to be the worst case, okay? And again, this is not just like, oh, this is what Ben thinks. This is just based on historical data. So I just want to go look at it really quick. So again, this is the 200-week SMA. Historically, it has been the bottom whenever we do go down. And right now, it's actually trading at a relatively low price of $13,367. However, you should note that it is moving up relatively quickly. And I mean, just a few weeks ago, or let's say, early in, say, February, March, it was at $10,000. Now it's at $13,000. One of the things that I used to say a lot, and I still think that there's a good chance that's true, is that I used to say Bitcoin will not be at a sustainable 20K until Q4 of 2021 or Q1 of 2022, with the idea of a lengthened cycle in mind. And therefore, but I also defined, what does it mean to be sustainable? What does it mean to be a sustainable 20K? I said back then, we need to be above the 20-week SMA, we need to be above 20K, and then we need to go down to the 20-week SMA and hold it as support above 20K. And if we do that, then I consider it to be a sustainable 20K. So far, we've not had that. And believe me, I had trolls coming out of every corner when we passed 20K saying, you said it wasn't going to be sustainable. But we clearly defined what sustainable meant, and that it needed to hold support above the 20-week SMA and continue moving up for it to be a sustainable 20K. And you can see that we were too far gone to hold it. We're coming back down. We're now below $29,000. And we're not even that far away from $20,000 anymore. So I've said before that a sustainable 20K means we need to be above the 20-week SMA and holding it as support above 20K. If that happens, then so be it. If we go to say 50K tomorrow, go back down and test the 20-week as support in a couple weeks, then I'll say, all right, guys, I think we're looking at a potential sustainable 20K. That hasn't happened yet. We have not even had a battle for the 20-week SMA above 20K. We battled it at 10K. Okay, we had the battle at 10K, but we did not have the battle at 20K where we even attempted to hold it yet. So this is what I'm saying with regards to Bitcoin in terms of sustainable 20K. We need to hold the bull market support band above 20K. And only then would I say it is sustainable. Okay, so again, I said it was a bear market a few weeks ago because we had a weekly close below the 20-week SMA. A lot of people didn't like that. They said, this guy's just spreading FUD or whatever. It's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting trying to figure out how people are going to explain that a 64K Bitcoin going to a 28K or 29K Bitcoin is still technically a bull market. I mean, to me, that's a pretty pathetic bull market if you want to call, if you want to call a 56% drop a bull market where we're below the 20-week SMA. This is why we stick to the data. Okay, the data does not care about your emotions. It simply does not care if you think Bitcoin should go to 300K by September. It does not care about that. It's just the data. And we're going to continue using the data here. If we get above the 20-week SMA and hold it as support, then bull market's back on. Until then, things are bearish, right? Until then, things are bearish. And this is what bear markets look like, right? I mean, prices generally go down. I mean, yeah, they can go up sometimes. Yeah, like a couple days here and there, you might see a pump. But generally speaking, bear markets are where the prices go down. I mean, even when we had a bull market, it's not like the prices went up monotonically. They went up and they pulled back some. I mean, there's some pullbacks here. There was a pullback here at 20K. There was a pullback here at 58K. So even when you go down, it doesn't go down monotonically. There's going to be some periods where it pushes back up. There's a good chance we could go back above 30K in the relatively not so distant future, but that doesn't mean things are definitively turning around. I think there's some people that are quick to react, and anytime there's like a move of a couple $1,000s, they say, all right, the bull market's back on, and they start making fun of anyone who is bearish. But remember, the market doesn't just turn around on a dime. Usually, sentiment can change on a dime, but the market doesn't usually just change on a dime. It usually takes time of grinding it out and then finding a floor and then slowly building back from there. Now, you could argue that the pandemic drop is where it did change on a dime, okay? I mean, we came down and we came back up. But you could also try to claim as well that, well, this was a fluke in the market, what was going on. So, but you can see that even in this case, we came back up to basically the level we had just been at the month before, and then we consolidated for months before actually having this breakout. I mean, we got here in April. We didn't really have a sustained breakout until October. It took a long time of building out support at this level above the 20-week SMA before we actually broke out. I mean, we had this capitulation, but we didn't have we didn't have this bull market until we actually confirmed this as support for a while. So for now, I think we're, this is the bear market blues for Bitcoin. Does not mean we cannot come out of it. I've said before that bull markets make you money, bear markets make you rich. Okay, the people that stick around in the bear market and stay for the next bull market, these are the people that tend to make a lot more money than the people that just go away for the bear market and or they sell everything in the bear market and then they just FOMO back into the bull market. So remember, bull markets make you money, bear markets make you rich. This right now, in my opinion, this is not a bull market. Okay, this is not a bull market. I'm basing my opinion on the data, but of course someone can interpret the data differently. But right now, the price of Bitcoin is, it's about 40% below the 20-week SMA. So this is a pretty substantial move below the 20-week SMA for us to be claiming that this is still a bull market. So remember, you can have more than one bull market, bear market within an entire market cycle. I think what would define it is if we go 3 years before putting in a new all-time high, then yes, like this 64K was the top of the market cycle. Okay. If we go 3 years, if we're looking at, if it's 2024 and we're still not putting in a new all-time high, then I would definitely concede that, okay, 64K was the top of the market cycle. I think that it's not going to take that long. Maybe even in a year, we could be putting in new all-time highs, maybe even sooner. I said I think we need 3 to 6 months of consolidation, bearish. I said we're in a bear market. We need 3 to 6 months of this before we can start to hopefully push back up. Maybe things won't become super bullish again until the people that think that it has to peak in December of 2021 start realizing that that's not what's going to happen. So remember, the market often does what people don't expect. If everyone thinks it's going to peak in September or December, that's pretty much when you know it's not going to peak. So let's continue to navigate the market cycle together. Obviously, things are bearish right now, but that doesn't mean they have to stay that way forever. I would at least look through, at least through the end of the summer. This is why I said 3 months. When we dropped below here in May, I said, well, hey, we need at least 3 months, I think, of some consolidation period where we're not continuing to just go up. At least 3 months, 3 to 6 months. 6 months would basically take us till the end of the year before we can really hope to build out a base and try to climb higher. If you guys like the content, make sure you subscribe to the channel, give the video a thumbs up. If you want to know how I'm navigating these markets, make sure you check out the premium list. You can find a link to that in the description below. Thank you guys for tuning in. Definitely subscribe, click the bell icon to turn on your notifications, and I will see you next time. Bye.